Welcome to An Archbender's Journal, The Last Will of Lucy Sutton. I'm your host, Terrence Franklin. In each episode, we go on an odyssey to discover my family history, and I invite guests to share their stories to bend the arc of history with their own legacy. You can find the show through YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now please, join me for An Archbender's Journal, The Last Will of Lucy Sutton. I'm your host, Terry Franklin.
Hey!
Hello. Hello.
I'm so happy to have you here for this episode of An Archbender's Journal. It's Dani Shear, who is a friend. We became friends just before COVID, but we have a connection through Northwestern as fellow alums. And in the time that I've gotten to know Dani, I've gotten to know her as this amazing, dynamic, creative artist, and she's also a wonderful mother and wife as well. But the parts that we're really sort of focused on today is all the creative stuff that she's into and doing and has done. She spent time traveling with Les Miserables. She's also written 4 children's books. She teaches 5th grade and is making her first short film. I know you're also a performer and a storyteller because I've seen storytelling presentations with you. And I'm just glad to have you here. How you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. Yes, I feel like storytelling is my superpower, just like it is yours. You know, it's something that's so crucial to keep our stories going for, you know, the next generation. And it's a lot of fun too. So
along those lines, maybe we could start off by talking. So we're talking about storytelling and family history, and that's a big part of our focus here. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your family's history, especially overcoming obstacles, as you know that we all face. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about some that your family has dealt with.
Will do. But I just want to say, first off, Terry, that I love how you are digging into your family's rich history, but not just the history, but the spirituality of that history. I think that's really rich, and I'm very proud of you. So my story is a little different in that. And I don't know a lot because a lot of my family perished. So my family was Austrian, and really my great grandmother divorced, and that was an unthinkable thing at that time. So it's my great grandmother, and I guess we're talking about the 1920s. And she married.
Quite a shock, I imagine, for
and she married a baron. So she was Jewish, but she married a non-Jewish baron who I guess had some political clout in Austria and ultimately saved her life. She was the only Jewish person to live in Austria during the war, which is, I mean, it's a movie right there. I should really write it. But she wore her yellow star, but they couldn't touch her. And she lived as a Jewish person but with this great grandfather who I never met, but my mom met him. And apparently he was lovely, this baron. And she stayed in Austria, but her son, my grandfather, was very young and is like 20 years old, 20-ish. And, you know, at that time, people just got married just to survive and try to get out. And he married my grandmother, and basically the two of them and my grandmother's sister are the only survivors. Everyone else perished. So the two of them went to Australia, got on a boat, and actually made it to Australia. And you had to have someone there to sponsor you. You couldn't just get on a boat. You had to it was difficult. But they managed to go to Australia. And my my grandmother's sister went to Israel. And those two sisters really are the only survivors, were the only survivors besides my grandfather. And my great-grandmother, who then actually made it through the war and moved then to Australia. And I was born, my mom was born in Australia. I was born in Sydney as well. And so, yeah, it's...
That's kind of, I've heard parts of your story about your being born in Australia and coming to the US with your mom. And, that's a fascinating story too. But I always kind of wondered, how did they get to Australia?
Yeah.
And now you just explained that to us.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
an
People
amazing
just
thing.
went where they could go. And a lot of places, wouldn't let in immigrants. It was quite difficult. It wasn't, easy peasy. I mean, it's still difficult, I guess. But it, during those crucial times of war, of course, about, I'm forgetting the name of the ship, the famous ship that was sent to New York and then sent back to Europe. They wouldn't allow them to get off the boat. So yeah, it was difficult. And if you could make it out of Europe, you were one of the fortunate ones.
You were lucky.
Yeah.
The stories of travel and going from country to country, it seems like that's a part of your blood almost. And I know we didn't talk about it in the pre-interview, but it is also a fascinating story how you ended up getting here. And I don't know if you want to tell a little bit about how you ended up moving into the States. I know it's part of your storytelling, but if you want to share, please do. But
Oh, Terry, that's so sweet. Yeah, I was just recently in a storytelling event with Northwestern alumni, and the theme, it was like a moth storytelling event, and the theme was adventure. And my personal adventure was coming to America at the age of 6 on a basically almost like a cargo ship. It wasn't quite a cargo ship, but it was a very
it wasn't a fancy cruise.
Not a fancy cruise. It was a pretty, we didn't really have much money, my mom and I, but she married my dad, a dad who adopted me because I did not know at the time my biological father. That's a whole other story. But we came on a boat. It took 1 month, and it was pretty harrowing because my mom got very sick during the journey, and I had to navigate my way at the age of 6, and I was very sheltered, and I didn't, I was this big ship with lots of strangers, and I would have to go and get her food. And I do remember, it's so weird how certain like feelings stay in your muscles, and like that ship, the way it would like toss and turn, it was a very I guess it was very rocky, and it was a rocky journey. And my mom was terribly seasick. And I do remember always that feeling of, somewhat of an unease. And yet it was kind of cool too. It was kind of like a little roller coaster, but that lasted for a full month, and getting her food. And then one night she went to the movies. I guess they had like a makeshift movie theater, and we were in this tiny, like, it was so small. It was basically just, you opened it up and there was a bunk bed, and that was it. And she locked me in and didn't tell me that she was going. And, at that time, I don't know, my mom wasn't exactly, it wasn't like children were, it wasn't, what's the word? What am I trying to say? It wasn't
as child-focused as we are today.
It wasn't as child-centric, that's for sure. So she just locks me in, and I wake up having to go to the bathroom, and my mom's nowhere to be found. I'm freaked out. I'm sure that my mom is overboard, because it's like my worst nightmare. I didn't have a dad. She was my only person. And here we are on this big ship going to this country that I didn't know. And there she was gone. And it was my nightmare coming to life. And I tried to open the door and I couldn't. I had to go to the bathroom. So I actually, maybe TMI, but I peed in the trash can.
You gotta go when you gotta go.
You gotta go. And banged on the door. And finally, this guy opens it up, maybe some sort of captain-ish person. And I screamed and I said, my mom is overboard. And I ran all over the ship and I ran to the edge and looked down and I knew that she was down there. And he pulled me back and managed to get me back to the room. And it was such sheer terror. And then I don't know how long later, my mom just kind of strolls in and I was like, where were you? And I remember she like took me to the shower and it was like a very mom-daughter bonding moment. And I was just so relieved to have my mom alive. But it was just a very scary, harrowing month.
Sounds like a real challenge, and I hope it was a good movie. I want to, but I feel like your experience in living through that as a little child and the terror of that maybe gives you a little extra edge when you're working with young children or trying to communicate with them, because I know that you teach and that you've also written children's books. And so this sort of brings me to how you bring your perspective as somebody who was a child to writing a children's book, because you're really trying to capture their interests and to be talking to them on their level. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your children's books, or any one of them?
So kind. I'd love to. So the children's book that I actually go around to a lot of schools and talk about is called The Foodie Club. It was basically born out of sheer frustration because I had a daughter who was very adventurous, but had a real adventurous palate, and a daughter who was so picky and who was so thin. And as a Jewish mom, that just like drove me crazy. Like, oh my God, how can I have such a thin child who doesn't eat? And I thought I can't be the only mom who's going through this, who has like one adventurous eater and one who's so picky. And I just had to get creative because meal times were a disaster. I mean, you cannot scream your way to good health and to successful.
Clean your plate.
Oh my gosh. Just wanted her to try one bite, but she was very willful and, she just would not. So I thought, okay. And eventually started like rhymes started to come to me about food. And that's really where the germ of the Foodie Club came. It was really to try and get my daughter to, to have a more adventurous palate.
And what is the Foodie Club how does it encourage people to try different things? What's sort of the basics of how it works?
So it's a little adventure. Mom and older sister Sunny team up to try and get Sunny to join the Foodie Club. And eventually, after all sorts of games, they end up doing a green smoothie stand instead of like a lemonade stand. And we have the recipe of the green smoothie in the back. And there's like badges that kids can earn if they try different food choices, and being a sous chef and eating the rainbow and blah, blah, blah. There's different ways to get your badges. And then we have a Foodie Club pledge. And when I go to different schools, we talk about, nutritional abundance. I don't put it that way, but, every mom wants their kid to eat with nutritional abundance. And so I just bring up food, and kids love to talk about food. They want to tell me that, oh, I'm more like Sunny, I'm really picky, or I'm like Sydney, I had sushi last night, I ate yellowtail, and they want to talk about it. And I just feel like we're so behind the 8 ball with nutrition, with kids. It's embarrassing. We're such a sophisticated nation and we're so pathetic. If you have kids and check out, at least in public school, if you look at the cafeteria food, it is horrendous. And it's really a shocker, Terry. And there's no reason we can't, for $3 a child, give them, nutritional food. You look at Japan, and they have these kids have bento boxes. I think it's about $2.50, the equivalent, and they have their rice and their veggies and their protein. And we can do the same. We can put a man, or a woman, hopefully, on the moon. Why can't we feed our kids good lunches? And so to me, it's just a way of getting the conversation going and making it fun.
I like the way you have sort of interactive, ways of sort of joining the club, and people can sort of follow along and be a part of that. Someday, 40 years from now, somebody be talking about how they were a member of the Foodie Club and how it helped them to develop these, better eating habits. So kudos to you for working on that and for creating opportunities for young people. But in terms of other creative stuff, I know the other thing you're excited about is your short film you've been working on. So tell me about that.
Well, so that is one of my, I love writing TV pilots, and one of my pilots got into like a Sundance collab. So I decided to take that pilot and adapt it to like a short film. I don't know why all of a sudden I just am in love with short films. I've been watching a lot of them. I think they're so interesting in that, again, it's that storytelling in a very small amount of time. And it's got to have a really strong arc. And it just seems really like a really exciting challenge. So right now I have it at 20 minutes, which is a bit of a long short. But I'm going to be fundraising, and I'm going to make this this short film. I'm very excited about it. I think.
Tell us a little about what it's about. What's the if you can.
Okay, so I won't mention the title because I don't want to jinx it, but it's basically my homage to struggling artists. Okay. I don't feel like they often are the protagonists of stories, and to me, artists are so noble, often, dealing with so much rejection, and yet they keep plugging away. And so this is sort of my homage to struggling artists.
Okay. We all need that. And, having been a member of the board of directors of Outfest, our shorts are a huge part of our programming because you can pack so much information and sort of a density of thoughts and ideas and arcs into just this little gem of a film. So I'll be excited to follow along and hear about artists develop. Are you? You want to say how far along you're on the stage? Have you started?
Have I started pre-production?
Yeah.
I'm lining up a crew right now, a DP, an LP's line producer, getting my budget in order, and then I'll be fundraising, and then I'm hoping to shoot in the fall. It's an optimistic date, but that's what I'm hoping for.
You got to set those targets and try to go for them, and then if they don't quite work, then at least you've gotten as far as you have. I mean, I have applied for things like grants for different film support, and it's funny how you go through that process of just putting it together. And even if you don't get it, just the process of forcing yourself to think about it and to really be in that mode of stripping away the unessential and focusing on what's really going to draw people to you and how you can market this. At least for me, I'm guessing that's probably what you're finding too as you put this together.
Yeah. And especially trying to take a pilot that was like 36 pages and cut it to a short. You really have to trim the fat. You cannot be precious about, that's really tough because there's certain scenes and dialogue that I'm just want to keep, but it's like, no, is that really, if you distill it down, you have to really just, take the essential story the arc, and because
Well,
so that's what I'm doing right now.
I think I read Stephen King's On Writing, and I'm sure he got it from somewhere else, but the idea of having, for their artists to have to kill their babies, I know it's a terrible concept, but you
Yeah.
create a thing that you put all this emotion and heart into, and then you need to change it into something else. And it's hard to get that perspective that allows you to say, as you would if you were someone else, well, cut these parts out, because if we cut them out, we'll have a much more direct and focused attention. So I wish you luck with that process.
Oh, thanks. I know it's awfully hard, but yeah, you got to just
You
think
can
about
do
the
it.
finished product. Yeah.
You've done everything. You can do it.
Thank you,
One other thing I
honey.
wanted to raise with you, because I asked you in our pre-interview about your favorite book. You mentioned Wifey by Judy Blume, and part of the reason why I'm laughing about it is because I remember when I was a little kid. I don't remember how old I was. I don't know when it came out, maybe 78 or something like that. I'm not asking how old you are. But when I was a little kid, and I was this nerdy little kid who liked to read novels, and I remember there was sort of a sexy cover on this book, and I hadn't read the Judy Blume, hello, it's me,
Are you
Margaret.
there, God? Yeah, it's me, Margaret.
Sexy book title, and I sort of slipped it into the stack when my dad was buying books, and I read it. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but I remember it was like this hot, sexy book. Why is it your favorite? Maybe
I just could relate to it. Like, I first of all, I just love Judy Blume. I think she's so real, and she's so not precious, and she's so, she's just she's real. She's and I love her style, and I just remember it was I just related to the book, a woman's yearning to.
Yeah, wasn't sort of a new. Was she newly divorced, or she was breaking up, and so
No, she was married, but she was like, I don't know, is this all? It's kind of your midlife crisis book. So that's what really appealed to me. She just she got to the to the core of of our angst, of our midlife angst, and I appreciated that.
I think it's cool. I won't go further, but I'll just say it resonated with me when I saw that on the list, because I remember, oh yeah, there's a sexy cover on this.
Oh, that's so funny.
Slip
Oh
it
my
into
God.
the stack. So I also, my big question is always, what are you doing to help bend the arc of history towards justice, or what might you suggest that others do if they want to try and do that? And certainly your work as a teacher and talking to kids, and I know you teach about lots of things that are sometimes challenging subjects that young kids should know about. But is there anything in particular that you'd like to say, either in terms of your bending the arc, or how you'd like to encourage others to do it?
Oh, thank you for asking. That's such a beautiful question. Yeah, so in Judaism, there's this concept called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And I definitely teach, we talk a lot about that with my students. And there's so many different ways, it can be very big ways to, and small ways, whether it's smiling at a stranger or picking up trash at the beach, or, helping a homeless person, give them some, your sandwich, or there's so many ways to help in a small way repair the world. And I think that's such a beautiful concept, in that each of us really, it's the onus is on us. And I pulled this quote from the Talmud, which I thought I'd share with you. It says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it."
Mm.
I feel like that just kind of sums it up. Like, do your part, be kind. I hope, I'm sure our ancestors did their part.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. And
I think that's a beautiful way of thinking about it. It's about being mindful in the everyday and the decisions and choices you make, and it resonates with the themes and the things that we've been trying to talk about in terms of the Lucy story, that we all have a role to play in shaping history. And, as a Buddhist, talking about these great ideas from religion all over, is that we're always chanting and praying for what we call Kozen Rufu, which is this enlightened world that we all want to pursue. But the fact is that working towards it is achieving it. So even if we can't see the milk and honey that people would dream of, our work to try to create that world of happiness for everyone, that's where we see it in our day-to-day actions and in our other human beings, because we are the ones who are going to make this happen. So I think your quote really beautifully sums up the fact that the work needs to be done, and we shouldn't expect that because we can't see it, that it isn't important.
indeed. Chef's kiss, Terry.
I love it. I love you. This was wonderful. I don't know if you have any parting words, but I'm just delighted to have spent this time with you. It's a Juneteenth weekend coming up, so we're going to be celebrating freedom and equality broadly. And I wish you a happy and bold and free weekend. And I just can't wait to see you the next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Good luck with all your projects. And I guess we'll be looking for the fundraising. If you get it up before we get this on posted, you'll be able to add that to your to the references.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dani. Have a great weekend.
You as well. See you later. Bye.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to an Archbender's Journal, The Last Will of Lucy Sutton. I've been your host, Terrence Franklin. You can find this show through YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.